Ready graphics? Ready theme? Cue it.
Good evening. For your information tonight.
Hi, I'm Jessie Mullins.
And I'm Lauren Milberger.
And this is FYI,
the Murphy Brown Podcast.
with a Russian flavor.
Also, we're getting into prime Corky here.
I want a mini-sode of just Phil versus Olga.
Really, Murphy?
Really, Murphy? It says Princess Power.
And on today's episode,
We'll be talking about Season 1, Episode 16, Moscow on the Potomac.
hi, it's Lauren.
Hey, it's Jessie.
Welcome back to the show.
Welcome. Here we are, ready for a new episode.
We are. And it's a very topical episode.
It is.
We're going to be talking about Russians.
Russian and Russian relations.
Oh,
In all their forms in this episode.
again, full circle moment on the podcast.
Why the show is relevant.
Yes. This week's episode is directed by Barnett Kellman.
Indeed.
It is written by Cy Duquesne and Denise Moss.
It aired on March 13th of 1989.
And it is a riff off of the film, we're guessing, Moscow on the Hudson, which was a 1984 film starring Robin Williams, directed by Paul Mazursky. And it is a sort of comedy drama about Robin Williams' character, who is a Soviet circus musician who defects to the United States.
I always forget about that movie.
Can't remember a lot of it, but I watched a lot as a kid.
Yeah, I when it's mentioned, I go, oh yeah. It's one of those movies that I remember seeing probably often because I think it was just constantly playing on TV, but that I don't think of when I think of like Robin Williams' filmography.
But something interesting from last episode, Mama Said, that we learned from our friend, thank you, Corby, is that we were actually correct. The writers did decide that Murphy is Avery, Murphy's mother's maiden name.
You all need to understand how excited Lauren and I were that we were right about this. Because we talk a lot about our headcanon. And first of all, we were both excited that we had come to this conclusion separately.
Yeah.
With the same mind. And then to find out that we were right.
And then get this, even addition to it, is that Corby said that this was something that they all knew but was never said in an episode, is that they believe that Avery is actually Avery's mother's maiden name.
Yes.
And so it's a tradition.
I love it so much.
It's great. I think it's quite beautiful.
And I was just having a conversation. I was at a wedding last night, and we were talking about one of my closest friends. Her middle name is her mother's maiden name, and it's something that I've heard often from people of our generation. So it feels very, very familiar, and it just, I don't know, I love the connection of it.
Yeah. Maybe even going farther back, Rose was a last name and then it became a first name.
Exactly.
Maybe the tradition will continue. And in a way, it has in a bit way. I mean, not the last name, but Avery is a family name and it has been passed on to Murphy's son. It's really pretty.
I like that. It reminds me of when we talked about the Jewish tradition
Yeah.
of the names. I was like, it's a nice little Gentile version. I enjoy it. So the song used in the opening of the episode is one of my favorites. It's Don't You Worry About a Thing by Stevie Wonder. It's a single taken from his 1973 album Inner Visions. It reached number 2 on the R&B chart. So something interesting about this song, especially from we're talking about a lot of Motown in the show, is the tune is in E flat minor. It starts with a Latin piano intro. And the opening melody is reminiscent of Horace Silver's song For My Father. Something that is interesting about this song, since we talk about a lot of Motown, is this one is a little fusion. And it starts with a Latin piano intro. And it's considered a Latin soul song.
And I know we talked about when we had Isn't She Lovely? I said that 76 seemed like the latest that we had for a song, and this is 74.
Yeah, this is a one of the more modern songs.
Yeah, and I could be wrong, but I think we grow out of that as we go further into the series.
We do,
There
yeah.
aren't a lot of 70s songs that I can think of. Yeah. So we start off with Murphy, and she is wrapping a present. And what's interesting to me is that she starts off wrapping this present with She-Ra wrapping paper.
It says Princess Power.
Well, because that was her
No,
thing.
I know. But I was dying because at first I didn't see She-Ra on it.
Oh.
And I just saw Princess. And I was like, this doesn't seem right. And then all of a sudden I saw Princess Power. And I was like, oh my gosh, is it? Oh my gosh, is it? And I rewound and I was like, it's She-Ra. I was so happy.
Not only is it She-Ra, which I'm assuming from your tone we were both super into as young children. I dressed up like She-Ra for Halloween.
I loved her so much.
I was upset that I didn't have the blonde hair. We tried to like spray paint my hair. It didn't work because we couldn't afford the wig. And my mother bribed me in second grade with She-Ra dolls. Why don't you tell people who She-Ra was if they aren't familiar?
So, for those of you who don't know, She-Ra was like the feminist answer to He-Man back in the day. She's the alter ego of Princess Adora, and she's the twin sister of Prince Adam, aka He-Man. She was supposed to appeal to young girls the same way that he did to young boys. And for those of us like myself who watched He-Man because I refused to believe that those things were just for boys,
Agreed.
this was like my intro to what became my Xena Warrior Princess obsession.
Oh, hey, yeah.
This is the reason
That makes total
I was
sense.
so obsessed with Xena, because I was like, yes, you can always have the alter ego on the other side that is just as strong, if not
And
stronger.
her outfit's very similar. She has a
is.
white horse.
It's not too
Oh,
revealing.
wait, is it a unicorn or a horse?
Yeah, it's a unicorn. It's a unicorn Pegasus.
Okay, yeah. I just said it out loud and went, wait,
I was
no.
like, wait a second. I
It's
knew
a
there was something else to it.
unicorn.
Yeah.
And what's really interesting, other than the fact that it's connected to our childhood like Murphy is that if people aren't aware, there is a new She-Ra coming back to Netflix.
Yeah, there is.
And what also makes it great is that it has a female queer showrunner.
I'm so excited because I also feel like because Netflix is so willing to lean in and we have this brilliant showrunner, we're talking about her mount, like the rainbow clad Pegasus unicorn.
Right.
I'm like, I just cannot wait to see this on a screen.
So speaking of wrapping paper references, so Murphy cuts it wrong and it's too short and it doesn't go all the way over, so she has to throw it out. Obviously, she ran out of the She-Ra paper. She must be going to a lot of birthday parties. Oh, for Gene Kinsella's kids.
Right.
That must be what it's
Exactly.
for.
No, that's absolutely who it's for.
Yeah, it's left over from that.
I just like imagining that Murphy wraps everything in She-Ra wrapping paper. Like, it's not that she goes to Kinsella's child party every party. It's that everyone gets something in She-Ra wrapping.
I don't know if I believe that.
That's my headcanon.
Okay. Hey, listen. I respect. You can have your headcanon.
That's why she ran out.
Yes. So the next one is so 1990. Oh my God. It looks like it should be at the Facts of Life store in the last couple of seasons when they ran a really hip store with party favors and neon stuff.
You know what it made me think of? Contact paper inside people's kitchens in the 90s.
Oh, you're right.
That's what it made me think. I was like, I'm used to seeing utensils on top of that.
But it also is sort of a little bit of a familiar memory for me because my cousin owned a store like that from in the Facts of Life.
That's so cool.
It was on Christopher Street. It got so big, it was called Greetings, that they took over 2 stores. And in fact, when I was a kid, I didn't understand that the rainbow in the window, I just thought that it was just a rainbow in the window. And rainbows were like all over my wall growing up. And that was also our safe word. Safe word.
That was my safe word. Oh my God. Okay. Anytime that you're doing something in a recording now and I need you to edit, I'm just going, wrapping paper, wrapping paper, wrapping paper.
No, it's
Rainbow, 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 rainbow. Hold back. Pull back.
We're going to take that. I'm going to keep this in the episode, but I'm going to take it back myself. No, remember in the 90s when they said that if a stranger picks you up, they have to give you a secret word?
Yes. Like the password.
Yes.
Yeah.
I was rainbow in my family because I mean, it's a very 70s thing, but yeah, so I didn't understand that's what the rainbow was. That was my cousin has a real rainbow in the window, and I love rainbows.
Sorry, I'm just so happy.
But also, it wasn't different to me. Like he brought his longtime boyfriend to parties, and they were always in my life, and so I grew up not thinking that this was supposedly like a wrong thing.
Everyone, that's why representation matters.
Yeah.
Because when you stop othering people and just treat them and see them as normal people, you realize there's nothing wrong with it.
Yeah, he was my cousin's partner as much as my father is my mother's partner.
Yeah, my one of my best friends when I was a kid had 2 moms, and my parents never made a thing of it. There was never a question about that they were good people and they were raising her very well and that they were very kind to me when I was a guest. And so there was never a point where I questioned whether or not it was wrong, because it clearly wasn't. They were a married couple just like everybody else's parents.
Yeah. My cousin unfortunately passed away in the late 80s, and I still have stickers from the store that I've kept just to remind me of him.
I love a sticker.
Yeah. Anyway, so this is a great opening scene. It has nothing to do with the actual episode.
It's exactly. I realized at the end of it, we never go back to why she's been wrapping something.
Well, we find out what's in the box later, but she never actually gives it to her. You don't need it for the episode. I think it's adorable and lovely. And the way that Candice Bergen throws the tape.
Oh, I love it.
Is kind of ridiculous.
I also love that she almost wraps the dinosaur at one point.
Oh, I noticed that.
And saves it.
Yeah.
And I just wrote it. I was like, at this point, you can hire people to do this, Murphy.
Yeah. Well, I guess it's because she didn't really buy it in a store.
But secretaries.
She doesn't have one.
I know.
That's the problem. But I always appreciate that they show that Murphy, in everything else other than her job, is a total mess.
Yes, exactly.
Yes. So eventually she just takes the garbage bag and pops
she just throws it in there.
throws it in, pops a green bow on it, done.
Yep.
Also, love the outfit, by the way.
It's
Is that like
phenomenal.
an olive dress?
That's what it looked like on my screen.
Yeah, and then sort of a peach jacket with a tie thing.
It's real. I mean, I would wear that.
I would wear that too. Yeah, and gold jewelry, which isn't my thing. I'm a silver person, but
Same.
it works on Candice Bergen.
She's got that coloring.
Yeah.
Yellow tones don't look good on me. So gold jewelry, unless I'm trying to look like, an elf in the forest, which I often am, I don't wear it.
And we're both translucent.
Yes.
So this is probably the color thing.
Exactly.
Okay. So so Murphy comes out of the... Well, first she leaves the gift in the office and we never see it again.
Yep.
And then she goes to the coffee island and Frank is not very happy at all. He has spilled coffee in his shirt. He doesn't want to be there. He has about 50 cassettes to screen.
I love how he just smiles through the pain.
He does.
He's just letting it happen.
He cut himself shaving. Murphy notices that he's bleeding. He has to be on location by 3, but no, Miles made them be there for a special guest who's coming for them to meet because it's the first joint Soviet-U.S. satellite dedication. Then Jim enters.
Oh, before.
Yeah, sorry.
I just want to, the first thing that Frank says about
Oh, you're
Vladia
You should say that. That's right.
is that she probably needs a shave more than I do.
Yeah, he's a little mean about it, but he's irritated.
Well, no, but I love that obviously there's a bait and switch when they enter.
Yeah.
Which I actually found surprising that they didn't play more into thinking that Olga was her. Like that opening joke that I was kind of expecting. I was expecting because of that line that we were setting up that we would think Olga was her.
Yeah.
And that we would have this whole thing that would happen, and then it didn't.
I guess it was hard because Miles was there.
Exactly.
Yeah, which leads
and they
to
know her that she's the Murphy. Like we've all seen her before. But again, if we've all seen her before, then why would he make that comment? Except that he's dissing Russians. It's a whole thing that I was waiting for the joke of, you must be Vladia.
Yeah.
And then it didn't happen. And she also said that she got what the present is.
Yeah, so
which was a very American gift.
It's lottery tickets and a towel from the Watergate Hotel.
I mean, it's a great gift for a journalist.
Also something that I really noticed, and we've had this before, but like something that is very different in contrast probably to today, is there are all these newspapers on the table. Mm-hmm. And I wonder if today there wouldn't be.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
I mean, I just think that a lot of certain people do still read the newspaper.
Yeah, it's the same reason why I still buy books.
Yeah, but I feel like the gist of our news is from the phone.
Mm-hmm. Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Or they're on their tablets, or they have I won't say it unless they want to like be a sponsor, but there's a particular like magazine app subscription you can get. So Jim enters with, it seems like only yesterday I was working in college at the affiliate in Chicago when news of Sputnik came over my car radio. Then he does this thing where he like looks up and away like he's visualizing the memory. God, I love that car. A 53 Buick Roadmaster. Driving along with the top down, the cold wind stinging my face. Oh, there was the occasional bug. I sold it for $200. Boy, did he see me coming.
I also sort of love the way that they dispense information in this episode, because Frank sort of gives it away a little bit, right? He says that there's this Russian newswoman coming. And then when Jim comes in, he goes, oh, I see Vladia Ronkov hasn't arrived yet. Okay,
Yes.
we have her name.
Yep.
And then Frank is like, well, I don't have to get excited because it's not my Soviet counterpart. Okay, we now have all this information.
Exactly. It's without an exposition dump. You just get all the information through dialogue and then throwing shade at each other.
Yeah, and I love that Murphy's like, you pitiful jaded man with a stained shirt. That Murphy's even excited about this.
She's stoked.
Yeah. So Frank is still really irritated because she's not there yet. He's got to get going. And the elevator dings, of course, and off the elevator comes Miles, then who we'll find out is Vladia, and Olga, her secretary.
And again, he said something like, did her tractor break down?
That's right, yeah.
Again, like all of these, which I appreciate the idea that, and they kind of do this with Kyle as well, where like all the people who are assuming one thing all switch their assumptions. So Murphy starts off really excited and everyone else is groaning, and then we have this, everyone flips it.
Yeah, good point. I hadn't thought of that.
I was like, oh, there it is, because the second that she was cool with it and nobody else was, I was like, uh-oh.
I also like that Vladia's wearing red.
Oh yeah, it's very
it's
Soviet.
But it's also Murphy red.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And I think they cast, we'll talk about Robin in a moment, a brunette to contrast Murphy. So it's like two sides, it's a mirror, it's two sides of the same coin.
Well, and the same thing with like the melon color that happens. They swap that. So
Yes.
at the end, They're wearing the melon.
Miles has note cards.
He's trying so hard.
I'm sure he actually mostly has it because he tries to pronounce Olga's full name. And he asks her if he got it right. And she goes, no.
She's so good.
I know, she's so wonderful. So Murphy and Vladia share what I call professional niceties.
Yes.
Murphy has her professional voice. Mm-hmm. She admires Murphy. Oh, that means so much. Blah, blah, blah. You know,
The canned answers they're used to getting from colleagues.
Jim goes hands across the water, as it were. And then Frank is just love at first sight, pushes in front of Jim, looks like, he's absolutely in love with her, introduces himself.
His full title.
He does. Frank Fontana.
Investigative report.
Vladia seems to like everything that Frank is doing.
Oh, Vladia likes everything that Frank brings to the table.
Jim has to literally pull Frank away, to leave. Mm-hmm. He's enamored.
Well, what I really appreciate, and the same thing we say about having the show be about people of a certain age as opposed to, except for Corky, but like young hot things that are running around.
Yeah.
Like Frank is not a leading man by any means.
Which is why they didn't want to cast Joe in the first place.
Exactly. But what's so great about it is the idea of his charisma and his integrity in what he does makes him so attractive to her. It's not like Jake walked in and it's like two massive hotties see each other and they're just into it. It's like minds recognize, and he has this confidence because of who he is.
Totally.
That makes him
Confidence is
so
sexy.
attractive. Oh my gosh. I would have gone for Frank.
Miles, Murphy, and Vladia are left alone. And Vladia thanks Miles and says that he probably wants to go off because his superior has, more errands for him to run. And this section is always shown in clips to explain who Miles is.
Because his great defense is I have a bathroom in my office.
But I love the beginning of it is I'm Miles Silverberg, the executive producer, the top dog, the big kahuna. But it's just funny to me that I know that this scene is shown a lot, in interviews to be like, let's explain who Miles is.
It sums him right up.
So Miles leaves and he says kind of like a kid, like, I have to go return a phone call from the White House. Honest. The honest part is what gets me. It's like he's like a little tiny child.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Murphy and Vladia go towards her office and she calls Olga Sonia. And she has to remind her that Sonia was last week.
I am Olga. Sonia was last week.
And for the first time, we see that Murphy and Vladia have something in common. Mm-hmm. They can't keep a secretary. And then Corky comes in late and does... Now, I know the idea of, did I leave something on is kind of an old trope joke, but I really love the way that Faith Ford plays this part.
It's so relatable. It's my nightmare.
Yeah. But it's done a lot in comedy.
It is.
But she plays it...
It doesn't feel old.
It doesn't.
Yeah.
That's what I mean.
Yeah.
And she comes in and does this whole thing back and forth. And then I love the fact that she's just about to, go. And then Murphy just has to stop her. Also, we're getting into prime Corky here.
Oh, yeah, we are.
They finally figured out what to do with her hair.
Yep.
And this is going to take us through at least, season 2 and 3. And this is what I think of as like classic Corky hair.
This is what she does.
Yeah. And then she says, this is Corky Sherwood. She also is on the show.
She doesn't even get a title.
No. And she's like, oh, God, I'm so embarrassed right now. So Murphy thinks that they should get into her office and get back to work, but Vladia has some alone time with Corky, who wants to, be sure to tell her, wink, wink, so to speak.
Our wee baby feminist.
Yes. If she needs to extend her stay in America, that, she doesn't let her know.
She knows people.
Yeah.
And then she says, don't be afraid to enjoy your personal freedoms while you're here.
Yes. It reminded me of Norman Lear has a podcast now that I've started listening to. It's fantastic. And he had Mary Kay Place on. And they were talking about Mary Hartman. Now, I never watched it. I know it from TV history, but I never got to watch it. And she said that her character had a moment where she goes on TV and she talks about, she's met a lot of Jewish people, and she goes, I can't believe they killed our Lord. and they had this whole conversation about she just doesn't know any better. That's the circumstances in which she comes from. Mm-hmm. It's not that she's a bad person. Mm-hmm. She just had never met a Jew before, and that was what she was told. And so this moment sort of reminded me of that, this sort of stereotype of that as far as Corky knows, America good, Russia bad.
Well, and also, I would say it's a little bit more than that, because there is an ignorance in assuming that the differences are bad for everybody, that like their
Yes.
differences are negative.
That's what I mean.
But as opposed to just being ignorant, she's also trying really hard to be like a progressive liberator.
Yes, she is, and I don't want to take that away
Yeah.
from Corky. I just,
It's just- she's missing some facts.
The essence of it, because I just listened to this interview, remind me of that idea.
Sure.
Is that, and that's what we're going to see with Corky, is that as her world expands and she learns more, she's able to then add on to the progressive views she wants to have.
Well, and I think these are the moments which is why I just feel like Corky wins like the most improved player award
Oh.
at the end of the seasons, because she's
The
just
end of the series.
Yeah, no, that's what I mean, is
Yeah.
that she's, as opposed to several other characters who know who they are and feel like they have reached their enlightenment, she is constantly trying to actually better herself and understand people. And I love it so much. And I love that in this scenario, it's not necessarily that Corky doesn't have the information, it's that she's heard information and she's just made some judgment calls.
Yeah. The biggest arc in the series for character
Is Corky.
Is Corky. And that was something that Diane promised her. She didn't want to play just another dumb blonde.
Yep. And she does it.
Yeah, she doesn't. So after Corky leaves, Vladia turns to Murphy and says that in her country, Corky would be working in a bakery.
She makes the same knee-jerk reaction that Murphy did.
In my country, she'd be working in the bakery.
So the two of them seem to have come to this place of unified similarity, and they're both smirking about their things. And then we cut to later, and they're coming out of the offices.
What's interesting to me is they're in the back.
In the back offices,
Which I think
yeah.
is where you watch stuff.
Exactly.
Because you have the TVs in the bullpen or what's playing now, probably. But whenever we see them sort of huddled over, a tape of something, it seems to be in that back room.
Exactly. So they come out, and the atmosphere has changed. We now see they're both kind of chomping at the bit, and we hear that Murphy is saying, "You're forgetting change in the political climate is what made this possible, so that has to be the lead in the story." And then we have Vladia coming back with the same intensity, the same Murphyisms with a Russian flavor, saying, no, without the technological advancements, it wouldn't even exist, so that has to be the lead and the theme of the story. They're face-to-face in the bullpen, and Murphy says, I think if you take the time to consider my idea, you will agree. And then Vladia says, okay, well, then you have to consider mine as well. And they both say, of course. And they sit, and they breathe, and then they both cannot do it. They're so in sync as being two sides of the same coin in this moment. But they're like, absolutely, I'll consider it. No, I can't.
And their outfits, like Vladia is in this, which is beautiful, this bright blue with this sort of pink shirt, and Murphy is in very neutral colors. Mm-hmm. Something also I noticed, because I skipped ahead a little bit to watch something for other references, Murphy kind of moves out of the neutral tones the farther they get into the series, and sort
does.
of much more bright colors. Yeah.
Because normally right now we only see her in bright colors when she goes on the air.
Yeah, that's true. I hadn't thought that.
We see her in neutrals during the day, but then the bright
Yeah.
colors on air. So I feel like the bright colors were kind of like her toupee. So Jim enters with his morning all, and we find out that in the time since we've seen them, Jim and Doris took Vladia paddle boating. I love as a Minnesotan, because that is a much beloved thing that we do on the lakes.
So here's the thing. I don't know much about the tidal basin, but I always assumed that this line is there because it sounds funny when a Russian says tidal basin.
It's pretty
Because
solid.
Everyone laughs, and I always think, is this a joke that I'm not getting, or is it just funny because she says tidal basin?
Tidal basin. My favorite moment in this particular little conversation is when Jim says that there were a few dicey moments when Doris leaned over to pet a duck, and then he does this hand facial gesture to comment, and you just realize what almost happened just based on what it's Charlie Kimbrough, man.
It's really, really subtle and great.
It's just perfect, Jim. And then she says, tomorrow I take you and Doris to 31 Flavors, my treat.
She's so proud of that.
She's so proud. And then Frank enters, and he says, hello, Vlad. And she says, hello, Frank. The way she says it,
I know.
oh, it's just like, oh, everything just happened to your body when you saw him.
It always makes me think like they had a night at Phil's and they stayed up late and they had
Right?
a conversation and this is the next day.
There's a lot of innuendo. They both know what they both want, but it hasn't happened yet. Like she just had the full body
Yeah.
flush just happened.
She is lonely, as we find out later.
Oh, yes. And he makes a joke in Russian to her, and she giggles. Like, you see her go from this kind of Murphy-esque moment to, like, a complete flirt, and I love it.
Is it a joke or...
Well, so,
Okay.
the way he said, we don't know what he says at first, and he says something to her, and he's saying it like it's a joke. in Russian. She giggles, and she's like, "Oh, it's so cute. He asked me where the bus stop is." Like, he learned one phrase and is just trying it out, but saying it like it's like his pickup line. And this is...
I love this so much.
So
as an adult.
As an adult, Murphy just looks disgusted. And he goes and he's saying, he's working on his Russian. He goes, and I'm this close to conjugating a verb. And he does this pincer motion with his finger.
And it raises
his eyebrows. And I just put, ew, because I know what conjugating a verb means to him in this moment. And he's doing in this thing like he's talking to his buddy, like, guess what? That's how I believe that nothing happened last night. That they were this close, but he knows he's just got to seal it. They're enjoying the anticipation. But Frank, you dirty bird.
Didn't get that was a sex joke as a kid.
And that's what we were talking about with Joe, about these specificities to Frank that he chose. And I was like, ugh.
Just the way he says it to Murphy, it's so dirty.
Oh, it's so dirty. And it's just that eyebrow and finger pincing.
Yeah, so Murphy hates this.
She hates it so much. She says, save his Das Vidanias and let them work. Which I'm pretty sure I know how to pronounce because of Anastasia growing up.
I can say thank you in Polish, but thanks to Mel Brooks.
Yeah, exactly. So then Frank does this great move where he stands up and starts to walk away, but then swoops around to the other side of Vladya and asks her to dinner. And she says, oh, well, I would love to, but we're probably going to be working very late. And he says, late is not a problem for me. I can stay up very late. And while they're both just swooning over each other, Murphy's in the background doing like a finger gun in her mouth. Because she wants to die.
Like mocks them and like,
oh yeah,
mouths their words like she's a 9-year-old.
Oh, she's so
like
childish.
Her brother. Like it's so great. And then she does the gagging thing. Yeah,
and she's just so grossed out by this.
Yeah, she is.
And Frank gets up and leaves and is with his swagger and she's
I like this
Frank man. and then Murphy proceeds to say, "Oh, I'm sure you'll have a very nice time. It's eat till you bust night at Ernie's House of Pork."
She's so done with this.
She's like, "Oh, you're gonna have a great time. It's super romantic." And then we got the elevator ding. Miles arrives, very, very doing his thing that he did when he was in front of Avery as well, where he's being very official.
Yes.
That he just arranged for 7 European nations to receive the broadcast live, which is a really big deal.
Yeah.
Because again, like people, you're starting to forget throughout the episode, like she's there for an incredibly important reason. That this is a meeting of two sides, and it's until recently people. The younger generation, I would say, I don't think anybody who was alive during this time can quite forget the tensions between America and Russia.
Yeah.
But we've had several years of away from the Cold War. We'll put it that way. But at this time period, this was a big deal that if you were going to have a cross-cultural live satellite broadcast. So the fact that you have 7 European nations that are all going to broadcast it at the same time is a huge deal. And he says, I'm also going to personally handle all the promotion, including a cover story of Newsweek.
And speaking of Newsweek.
Indeed.
So this episode aired March 13th, 1989. And on March 13th, 1989, Murphy Brown was on the cover of Newsweek.
Funny how that works.
There's no way they would have known that, I think, but who knows?
I don't know. That seems so...
You think? I don't know.
I mean, to get covers and stuff like that, you have to plan a long time in advance. There's a lot of
I guess so. So maybe
pieces.
It's a little wink?
I wouldn't be surprised.
I mean, there's 2 references to Newsweek in the episode.
Exactly. It could have been anything else.
Yeah.
It would have been hard to change it to Newsweek last minute.
So Murphy is on the cover, and she's wearing her outfit from And So He Goes. Mm-hmm. She's got a pencil in her mouth. And we'll post the picture on the show notes and on the social media. And the cover says, How Women Are Changing TV, New Power on and Off the Screen. And inside, the title is Networking Women. And I could not find a copy of this.
Hopefully we'll have an angel that can provide.
I think I have to look through microfiche at the library to find it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so that's a fun little fact. Back to the story.
So Miles also says, and on the cover story of Newsweek, and he's all proud of himself, and then he pulls out in hands, he's like, and here's a personal letter from Meryl Streep commending me on a piece I did about pesticides last year.
Honestly, Miles, this need for approval. Like, really, Murphy? Really?
Really, Murphy? And then we see as well that Vladya has changed her mind about Miles. And she says, in my country, one so young would never. You have won me over. You are like a bulldog. And then he turns and goes, bulldog. Did you hear that, Murphy?
I love the way that Grant, he sort of like semi-clenches his fist. Bulldog.
Bulldog.
Like a bulldog.
He's so into it. Did you hear that, Murphy?
So something interesting from the Murphy Brown book, and I'm guessing that when there are actually summaries in the back of the episodes, that they must have been working from original scripts and not the actual episodes, because it says in the book that Vladdy and Murphy argue over the location. Should they do the report from inside the studio or in front of the Washington Monument? And at one point, Miles says, "World peace and a 40 share all in one. Maybe an Emmy for me. I think we're making history." Mm-hmm. So that must have maybe something that they cut?
They must have
Yeah.
been. I feel like it does make sense that they wouldn't have done Washington Monument because that kind of looks like America One,
Yeah.
whereas the studio's a neutral.
Which they end up doing in the studio.
I love when Miles stands up because she just goes, "My journalists." And that's when Murphy tells him to go find a hydrant. We're
Yeah.
busy. Which then, as he walks away, Vladia says he's very attractive in his own way. To which Murphy shouts, "He's gay."
Which she's done before. She'll do again
Yeah.
in season 2 to just be
Yeah.
like, I'm done with this conversation and I hate all the people around
Yep.
me. Can we just get on with this?
Yep. I forgot that was like her go-to to shut someone down for flirting with somebody, was to just say that the guy is gay.
No, I mean, not necessarily. The other time I'm referencing is she's pissed at Frank.
Yeah.
And his sisters come up to Murphy and say, "We're so glad that you're doing this party together. You know, we were so concerned about Frank and we're so glad that you guys are a couple." And she goes, "He's gay."
Yeah, but I do, when we talk about timeliness of jokes and so on, that's
Yeah.
it's an interesting choice. Because we don't see that joke very often now.
No, we don't. But I
Also
so
because
is it-
it's somebody who's absolutely not.
Yes. So to me, I'm okay with the joke, though I wouldn't make the joke today. So to me, it's about Murphy is trying to get back to work, and so her objective is to just end this and stop her flirting with everybody.
No, that's
Yeah.
Yes, that is the reason.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is that it's interesting. I'm not offended by it, but I find it interesting because we're used to seeing that be a joke when somebody is interested in the other party to try and shut someone down.
Oh, I see where you're going. Okay, I could see that.
Basically, what I'm saying is I'm not offended by it. I wouldn't make the joke now,
Agreed.
but it just stood out to me for whatever reason.
Same here.
And then what I love is that we see Olga at work, and she's actually competent. She is extremely competent.
Yeah, I feel like what we also forgot before to mention was Murphy says, I'm in between secretaries myself. Why don't you work for both of us?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And they go over and start demanding things of Olga, who's now at Murphy's desk, which is a great way to kind of fill the desk without having an American counterpart. But what
Yeah.
you see is that the Russian assistant is exceedingly competent. She's taking information from both of them and holding down the fort, which I found interesting.
You know what that scene reminded me of? It reminded me of in the inauguration episode when Frank is trying to get information about Jackie out of
Yeah.
Miles.
Yeah.
It's a very sort of Abbott and Costello back and forth, and only people who are really adept at comedy would be really good at that. So that's a stellar scene. It was so quick, it was even hard to transcribe.
Yeah, exactly. And I would say that I feel like if the choice had been to have an American secretary stuck between the two of them, Murphy's secretary would be completely incompetent and overwhelmed by those two people. And it's definitely a joke of the staunch Russians. She'd be able to handle it.
Yeah.
I think it would have been the Murphy's secretary. She would not have been able to take all those notes, and it would have been a joke about how overwhelmed she was.
Yeah. And also something sort of quickly to note for anyone in our audience who doesn't remember or is too young to remember. So this is March of 89, and November 9th, 1989 was when the Berlin Wall fell, which really sort of started the end of...
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's that's where I was kind of going when I said we have more distance from the Cold War, but this was a big deal to be having this topic because it was not forgotten.
No, and very timely at the time, for Reagan and Gorbachev were speaking and, trying to fight the Cold War.
But it was definitely, it was representing the very tenuous coming together that was actually happening at that time.
Yeah. So we cut to Phil's, and Olga comes in, sits at the bar. Phil figures out she's one of the Russians, and he's got all this Russian food and drink. And what does she want? It's all in the back. And she wants a hamburger and a Coke.
I want a mini-sode of just Phil versus Olga.
Oh, yes. This is great.
It's delicious because Mary Pat Gleason is amazing.
Should we quickly talk about Mary
We
Pat?
should. Can we also just give Olga some major props for a strong handshake?
Yeah.
I was trained by my father at a young age to have a strong handshake, and I just love seeing any female. Now, granted, I know they're kind of trying to make her look a little butch because she's Russian joke with that, but I just like, yeah, women have good handshakes. Get it, girl.
Yeah, no, she knows what she's doing there.
Yeah.
And so does Mary Pat Gleason.
She sure does.
So something we found out, interesting enough, Jesse.
Yes, is that she is very close friends with Marianne Muller-Liley.
Yeah,
Which I just love that those two are friends.
We didn't know. We just mentioned that we were mentioning the people that Mike, that we were gonna be contacting next, and she went, I might help you with that.
I might be able to find Mary Pat's info for you.
Yeah, so she's just like Marianne, one of those character actresses whose faces that you know, who's been in everything.
Everything.
She has 164 IMDb credits. She is kind of the new Rosario in the new Will and Grace. People might know her from that. But she was in Full House and Dear John and Perfect Strangers and Friends and Two Broke Girls and Sex and the City and The Middle and How to Get Away with Murder. One of my favorite movies as a kid, Troop Beverly
Oh,
Hills.
so good. That might be one of the first things I recognized her from as a kid.
Probably, yeah. She's also the waitress in Defending Your Life. I think people might know her from that. And then something special to Jesse's heart.
She was on an episode of Murder, She Wrote, everybody. So we're going to take a quick little deep dive into that. So one of the reasons why I just want to call out her episode, she's in an episode called Night Fears. It's episode 2 of season 8. Season 8 was a really big deal when we talk about women of a certain age and women being just bosses in TV, was that Murder, She Wrote had been on for 7 seasons. The ratings were starting to go down a little bit, and Angela Lansbury, being a boss, was like, no, I'm not going to, we have more stories to tell. We're not going anywhere. So because of her, they uprooted Jessica Fletcher from Cabot Cove and sent her to New York City for season 8, and she was like, she's going to have younger friends. We're going to keep it active and light. She's going to be fashion forward. Like they made it so, one, she wasn't going to retire anytime soon, which I love that they did that with an older woman. They were like, no, she's still valid. She's still relevant. We can keep doing this. She can have younger friends. And so they get her a job teaching in New York. And the first episode is kind of the transition. And the second episode is her first real New York episode. And the setup of it is that she goes in and the guy she's replacing thinks she's a joke, that she's a writer who doesn't deserve this position. And so she's basically the professor, who is an ex-cop, and why he thinks she's a bit of a joke, challenges her to basically race to solve a case. And Mary Pat plays a reference librarian in this episode and is obviously fantastic. And I just love her. But I think that episode is very important to talk about the roles of women and adult, mature women within television. That this episode would not have happened of Murder, She Wrote if we didn't have a strong, mature woman in charge of saying, like, no, I'm not irrelevant yet.
I love that. So Phil's very upset because now he has a refrigerator full of borscht, which he looks so sad about.
He says, I got a kitchen that looks like downtown Minsk, and she wants the golden arches.
Which, by the way, Phil, really? Did you think that that's not what was going to happen?
Yeah, they're in a new place. Of course they want to eat American things.
Yeah, why would you want... Anyway, everyone except for Murphy is sitting having probably lunch, I'm guessing, right? Yeah. Frank is just so in love with Vlad. He wants to know if she's been talking about him. And Miles gets the point of, or the crux of this whole thing.
He calls him out.
It's
awesome.
Miles thinks that the real appeal... I'm so with you, Frank. I get it. Is the fact that Vladia will be leaving soon.
There's an expiration date.
Exactly. And Jim, very, I think, out of character for him, but
It is.
also great.
Except for the ending of it is very him.
It is very, yes. He turns sort of very deadpan to Frank.
She said she's deeply in love with you and she wants to become your wife. And Frank blanches, and you see the neurotic commitment phobe. And there's just a beat, and then Jim, amused with himself, goes, I'm such a card.
No, this is actually, this scene has a blooper.
Yeah, it does.
Where I guess everyone had been laughing for so long. We're not really sure why, but that happens a lot on the show. And you hear Barnett ask, okay, who hasn't laughed yet? And Grant raises his hand, and then they all sort of laugh again. This is when Murphy's actually at the table, which is, going to happen later. Murphy comes in blue gloves, guys. Blue leather gloves and a blue jacket.
Gorgeous.
I love it so much. And that she hates Vlad and wants everyone to commiserate with her.
Also, I just love that we're using what is usually a masculine name as like the shortened name for her.
For Vladia.
When we see when we, at least as Americans hear Vlad, we think it's going to be some like bruiser dude
Okay.
who walks in. But I love that she has a semi-masculine nickname, which suits with Murphy as well. Murph, you would not immediately think is a woman.
Yeah.
Which we know is a maiden name. But I just love that they both have this kind of this monosyllabic kind of androgynous nickname.
Yeah. So she goes through sort of what she thinks, Vlad's bad qualities are. She's stubborn. She's rude. She grates on her like the Bee Gees.
She's describing herself.
Yes, she is. And Frank wants to know if she said anything about him. Murphy goes, "Come on!" I love it.
Because he's just swooning.
Yeah, and Miles doesn't get it. Yes, she's tough, but he likes her. Murphy wants Jim to back her up, but Jim likes her too. And he talks about working with a team is hard. Working with another person, I should say, is hard as a team. And he had to once work with Garrett Utley. I almost slapped him. Murphy goes sort of to sulk at the bar, and Miles goes up to her and he's concerned. My picture of Glasnost doesn't include two women rolling on the floor strangling each other with mic cords. Murphy says she's a professional. When was the last time she couldn't hide her feelings during a broadcast? And I thought, yes, you were suspended for that, Murphy.
I mean, I was like, we just talked about how you can't do that, Murphy.
But she doesn't mention that time.
I know that. I found that interesting.
Which means that there's a lot of times.
Yep.
Right?
So many.
She goes, not including Phyllis Schlafly, which made me howl with laughter, Burt Lance, or Shirley MacLaine. And she does these little sort of pauses. And okay, bad question.
Can we talk about these horrible people?
Yes, let's talk about them.
And by the way, what Murphy thinks are horrible people, I would say two of these people are probably bad people.
Shirley MacLaine was a joke.
No, so that's what I want to get to. That's why I'm like, asterisk.
We both love her.
Yes, but I know why Murphy would have disliked her. But first and foremost, Phyllis Schlafly. I wrote an entire paper in which I referenced Phyllis Schlafly just so I could use her as the wrong reference, as the counter argument that I then got to shoot down constantly. I did a thesis in undergrad about Top Girls by Carol Churchill, and I used Phyllis Schlafly references to argue against it. And therefore, I have a lot of distaste for this woman, having had to take in her opposing point of view. So Phyllis Schlafly is most famous for being a conservative political activist. In particular, she was very against the Equal Rights Amendment, which, for those of you who don't know, that was a proposed amendment, and it was designed to guarantee equal legal rights for all American citizens, regardless of sex. It was seeking to end legal distinctions between men and women in terms of divorce, property, employment, and other matters. Very hot button topic to this day.
Yes.
She was very against it. She wrote multiple books that, you know what, I read them so you don't have to.
Oh, yes.
That although if you're someone like me, I am a firm believer that if I want to disagree with someone, I need to know exactly what they're saying. I need to hear it, understand it, so I can then argue against it properly.
I agree.
It's why I read Twilight, so that I could tell people exactly why I dislike it.
Okay, I won't read 50 Shades of Grey, so I'm sorry. I draw the line there. You read it?
If you're reading it for comedy, it's great.
Okay.
I read that one, so you don't have to. So basically, she spoke at length about how women need to be in their proper place as homemakers and mothers and wives. And while I think that if you are free to choose that lifestyle and that is what you want, all to you.
Agreed.
Homemakers are incredibly hardworking people who deserve all of their respect. So are the people who do not choose that for themselves. Mm-hmm. And she did not agree with that. The greatest thing about Phyllis Schlafly is that while she preached about all these things about how women need to stay home and be homemakers, she did the exact opposite.
I'm literally raising my hands going,
yes,
here we go.
This is why she's the worst. She was a constitutional lawyer. She was constantly out and about at speaking on behalf of women who stay at home, while never staying at home herself. She just was everything that she was preaching against, and I find her very upsetting. So if I was Murphy, I would not have been able to keep my face still either, because I would have spent the entire time like just doing little ticks next to everything she said that was hypocritical.
And if I may jump in real quickly, what I was telling Jesse off mic was I first knew who she was as the butt of jokes in 80s sitcoms.
Which is where I believe she deserves to stay.
There you go.
I mean, rest in peace and all the best to her surviving family. But I think that her work and what she represented deserves to live as a punchline.
And for those of you who might want a quick little video about her, if you're unfamiliar, the Makers documentary.
So good.
Is really great. Diane and Candace are in it, actually. And there is a section about her that is very succinct, and I highly recommend it.
Yes, I cannot be succinct about Phyllis Schlafly because I have so many thoughts. And I don't want those hours back from reading her stuff because now I know why I dislike her. Anyway, so Burt Lance, who is mentioned, is best known because he was part of the Carter administration, but he resigned very early on due to a scandal in office. He was eventually cleared of all the charges, actually. But he was a businessman, and he was serving as the director of the Office of Management and Budget under Jimmy Carter. And within I think the first year of the first term, he had to resign because the scandal was such a big deal.
I felt like reading about him because I had to remind myself of who he was, I'm sorry to say. I was like, oh my God, this is so topical right now.
I will say, fun fact about Burt, he is credited with popularizing the phrase, if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Yes.
Which is problematic given his history.
Can I talk about why we both probably think that Murphy hates Shirley MacLaine?
Because she's New Age?
Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
Because she was sort of the butt of jokes because she wrote a book in which she said that she had many past lives.
She believes in her spirituality, believes in reincarnation.
And instead of maybe just respecting what she thought, it was considered sort of a little out there. And so she was the butt of a lot of jokes. But what I love about Shirley MacLaine, many things I love about Shirley MacLaine, but on this topic, in the film Defending Your Life, which we just spoke about, there is a scene where they go to the reincarnation pavilion. I love this movie so much.
So good.
To see their past lives. And the intro is done by Shirley MacLaine.
Sure is.
She has a sense of humor about herself.
That's why I love her. I love her so much. She's so talented, but also she knows that people don't take her seriously, and it doesn't matter to her. She takes herself seriously, and that's what matters. But I do understand why the public face of Shirley MacLaine is something that Murphy Brown has no interest in.
Yeah, and that's sort of faded away, and you know,
I think because she handled it so well.
Exactly. So Vlad comes in, and Murphy really, takes Miles's words to heart, and Miles says that they should find some common ground, and they should take some time off before the broadcast and do something that day. They're pretty much done with their work, something that they can sort of bond over. What has Vladia always wanted to do? And she wants to go to Atlantic City.
Fair.
Okay, well, we'll talk about that in a second. And I love that Murphy goes, "You're kidding." I love it. Yeah. And they decide that they're going to take the 9 a.m. shuttle. And Vlad thinks this is going to be a very good time for them. Very good time for them. So my father owned a furniture store, which is my grandfather's. And there would be shows in Atlantic City that we would go to. I mean, I don't remember the first time I have a memory of it. So maybe this is later. But it was not the way they describe it. It was not Las Vegas to me. It was kind of seedy and run down. And I remember the Taj Mahal Trump's casino being, condemned or whatever, and it was bankruptcy. And it was before they let kids be in the casino.
Yeah.
So because we were there, we'd have to take these weird roundabout ways through the hotel and like down the stairs and in the basement just to get around the casino to get out.
Yeah.
One time cops were chasing a guy. That's how far off we were.
That's cool.
Yeah.
But I can see why
No, I see why she wants to go.
why the Russian wants to go.
But then again, I wouldn't be seeing Nudes on Ice, would I?
You would not be
No.
seeing Nudes on Ice.
would not.
Or you would not.
Yes.
They make this plan to go to Atlantic City, and we cut to the broadcast. And it's not a very relaxed broadcast. Everyone seems very stressed out, and we hear that it's 3 minutes till air, and it's not like Murphy to be late. And Miles is freaking out. And he's like, it's not like we'll have an hour of dead air. I mean, we can just film my heart attack. And he's like, but it's fine because the point is that they're having fun playing Keno together. It's very Miles right now. So as everyone's freaking out, there's 3 minutes to go. They have to, it's a live broadcast. And let's remember, 7 European nations are tuning in. Luckily, the women appear. And we have Murphy in an I'm with stupid sweater where the arrow is constantly pointing at Vlad.
By the way, they eventually took publicity pictures for season 2 with this sweater with her and Miles, and it's in the soundtrack thing.
The liner notes?
Yeah.
And then we have Vlad in what looks like a sweater puppy outfit. It's a very interesting outfit. I stared at it for a long time, and then I realized I had to keep watching. But They are both very upset, and we find out that they missed the last shuttle because someone had to go through the Graceland on Boardwalk Elvis Museum twice, meaning Vlad. And we have a big Murphyism where she says she just spent the last 4 hours driving at warp speed in a cheap rental car that smelled of cigarettes with windows that wouldn't go down and a shrill whining noise in the passenger area, glaring at Vlad.
And something, if I can point out, when they get them ready, I may be wrong, but I actually, for some reason, I think as I was watching the Emmy interviews of anything about Murphy to get some behind the scenes stuff just to remind me, and then it played Judy Crown, who was the hairstylist, her talking about being, and she said, "Oh yeah, one time I was actually on the show," and she didn't say which episode, and then I'm watching it, and I went, "I think that's her."
That would make sense.
So the blonde, who is actually the one who's mostly
Fixing
doing
things.
Candace's hair, is actually her hairstylist the hairstylist for the show.
Which makes sense.
She has 2 Emmys, one of which is for designing women.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so cool. So they start going back and forth about how their grievances with each other. Apparently, Murphy called the rental guy a weenie and a bow tie, so that probably didn't help them with getting a nice car. And then apparently Vlad has a lot to learn about reading a map. And then apparently we find out from Vlad that Murphy is cheap. That she ate a free pancake breakfast at 4 different locations.
Spoiler, Murphy is cheap.
Murphy is cheap, but guess what? That's how you become frugal. Then we find out that Vlad was throwing back every free drink possible at the casino. And she says she hopes they'll be opening a Raisa Gorbachev clinic real soon for her.
That's such a great line.
It's such a great, for those, like, it's a Betty Ford.
Yeah, it's Gorbachev's wife.
It's Gorbachev's wife. So we know that Murphy is intimately aware of Betty Ford Clinic. She's hoping the Russian equivalent will happen soon for Vlad. We find out that Murphy fed the slot machine for 20 minutes until Vlad pulled her away. The old lady got the jackpot on the next turn, and she says, "You owe me $27, and I'm only going to say that once." Which Vlad says, "This is the 6th time you're only going to say that once."
It's a really great back and forth.
It's so good. They are equals. I have to say, kudos to. Should we talk about Robin Strasser?
Let's talk about Robin.
Kudos to her. Like she's toe to toe with Candice Bergen. Robin Strasser was born May 7th, 1945. She's best known as Dorian Lord from One Life to Live on ABC. Fun fact, her birth name is Robin Victory in Europe Strasser.
So awesome.
That is so cool. And because she was born on the day Germany surrendered in World War II, which I was like, wow, that is so specific. That is a fascinating little life. I just think that's really cool. Something that I enjoy as linking into another great actress that we spoke to, Marianne Muller-Liley. Robin, from 2001 to 2002, appeared on Passions as a 300-year-old witch named Hecuba. So she's been actively an actress from 1964, and she's still going.
She returned to play Dorian again from 93 to 2000, and then 2003 for the online revival of the series.
Yeah, and she's you can find her on Twitter. You can go look up her IMDb. She is still actively out there and working, just like Marianne is. We find once after she says the 6th time you're only going to say that once, Murphy says she can't take anything she says seriously with that stupid accent. It sounds like you should be plotting big trouble for moose and squirrel.
Just a great line. And I realized that I would sometimes repeat this line, forgetting that it was from Murphy Brown.
Yeah.
I would just say it to people, like in reference to something Russian.
Well, I realized I have a lot of younger coworkers at my day job, and I made a moose and squirrel reference, and I realized most of them have no idea what I'm talking about because none of them knew Rocky and Bullwinkle, which makes me so sad because when I hear a strong Russian accent, it is the first thing I think.
I love Boris and Natasha.
Oh,
they
so
are fantastic.
much.
I love them so much.
It's where I learned how to practice one. And then she proceeds to tell Murphy, "I lied before. You looked stupid when Wayne Newton took you on stage and sang to you."
The Wayne Newton. I like
The Wayne Newton.
Some things are just really funny in that accent.
It's so great. And then Murphy proceeds to say, "We kicked your butts in the Cuban Missile Crisis." And then they're like, no, guys, we actually have to do the show now. And neither of them want to wear the melon blazer. They're just they're taking them out of their outfits and just throwing blazers on them.
It's the only time, and I know that Murphy is really yelling at Vlad, but it's the only time I've seen her act like a diva to the crew.
Exactly.
I won't wear the melon. I never wear the melon on the air.
Yep.
And I was like, oh, Murphy.
And then she says, "Okay, I'll wear the melon, but I'm not going on until I get my $27." And then Vlad says she'll pay her after she pays her for her ticket for Nudes on Ice, Buster. And I love this next Corky moment. Corky walks up to them right before we go on to air And she says, I'm just going to say one thing and then I'm out of it. You two have the opportunity to do something that Raisa Gorbachev and Nancy Reagan couldn't do, and that's to rise above it all and show the world that women can make a difference. Think about that when the red light comes on and millions of eyes are on you.
Corky for the win.
That little speech is so good, and I straight up cheered and started applauding. It's my favorite part of the episode.
It's the best.
It's the best line of the episode.
And if I can say, this is not one of my favorite episodes. I have not watched it a lot. Although there's a lot of season 1 I just haven't watched a lot. But I was trying to think as I was watching it, why don't I like it? Is it because there's two women arguing with each other and not getting along? And then that line happened, which I'd forgotten. I went, oh, Lauren, of course, that's what this is about. And I love it so much. And I don't know why it's not one of my favorites particularly, but the message is really beautiful.
And it's something we really need right now.
Yeah.
It's when she said that, because of our current climate, it meant so much more to me than just the American-Russian conversation.
Yeah,
it makes me think about the split in our country right now, the bipartisan problems.
Yeah.
It just is that thing of like, let's actually get over it and work together and actually make a difference for a greater good, and not it's such a good. I love that Corky got it. I love that we gave her that moment, and then with a perfect Corkyism, then just turns and goes, and think about asking my opinion when you have a wardrobe question. Those jackets make you look flat-chested. Yeah, and then she storms back to the desk.
She's so offended.
She's so like, oh, I could have helped you.
Dare you do that?
It's so great. And so then they have the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and they are just heaving breaths. Like, it is, you just see them like getting their stuff together and they're going to do this. And we go to Jim, who opens, and he says, Murphy is joined by a special guest. And you see Murphy with her, thank you, Jim. And they do the exact same pasted smile, niceties, and they do this head turn at the same moment, and you're just like, and they're in their element, and they are the same person.
But it's this so professional thing of like, oh, we love each other and it's great.
Oh, it's
Look
so
at the
nice.
camera.
It's that, again, it's the like the news show trope.
Yes.
Nobody's gonna know what's happening behind that camera.
No.
It's just, you just immediately see them like lock in. They're like, hi.
I mean, I think it's the same reason why we love The West Wing. You know, Aaron Sorkin says that he is interested in those 10 seconds before the camera goes on, you know, before the CNN interview, the behind the scenes stuff, you know, and you watch a lot of Sorkin, and a lot of this is that we don't see a lot of the on air stuff because that's not interesting.
That's not what it's about.
Yeah.
We've seen that.
That's when it fades out. That's when
Exactly.
we're sort of done, or we cut to the end of the program, you know?
I'm always a little thrown off when I watch Murphy and we see a lot of the broadcasts.
Yes.
It doesn't, also because it feels fake to me, because I want the backstory. Like, that's what I'm here for, is what's happening. So whenever they're doing a story, I'm like, well, I know this isn't real because there's more. Like, I'm here for what's happening.
Her Murphy voice also helps.
Oh, I love it.
I'm on air now.
I'm on air now.
I'm Diane Sawyer. Even her face is different.
It's so great.
Yeah.
And that's what they
Thank
both
you.
do the same face.
Thank you very much. So we cut to the townhouse. Murphy's having a party for Vlad. There's photographers. They're both in very 1980s outfits, if I may say.
Oh, it's phenomenal.
Yeah.
Those shoulder pads are to die for.
We got blue. We got pink. Something interesting. The book, again, the Murphy Brown book, references that there's a whole thing with Eldon. Now, a lot of times for time, Eldon a lot of times gets cut for time.
Which is, I mean, I get it.
Yeah, because it's not part of the plot. And
Yep.
if you know, the episode has to run a certain time, so there's enough commercials. So you're sort of, sometimes you're stuck if it runs long. Murphy feels that the photographer should give them a chance. You know, Vlad has a like long flight tomorrow, which is a good little drop in for later on. So we know, you know, when it comes up again, they should let them be, and they should get going. Eldon starts greeting everybody and saying goodbye as if he's the husband.
I love his extreme love of pink and black, because he's wearing it again. Because of this, he will forever be in that pink and black bowling shirt that he loves so much.
Yeah.
But his dressy outfit is pink and black. It's just so
nice. I like
so
it.
Elton.
It's so 1960s.
Yeah, he's very dated, and I love it.
He's retro.
Yeah,
You know,
he makes it work.
there's some Russian guy, we're not really sure who he is, you know, like comes over and just like, I'm Russian guy. Bye.
Direct quote, that Russian guy.
Thank you. You know, I like to say specific when I do the summary.
yes.
Who probably, I'm guessing, is actually Russian by his accent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's pretty strong.
Yeah. So pretty much everyone's gone, but the three of them, Eldon, Vlad, and Murphy. And they're both very tired. You know, Eldon's all wired and he wants to watch a tape. This is so
He
freaking
wants to watch
random.
a tape.
He wants to watch a tape, and his tapes are at the house. He's like, you got my tapes mixed with yours. Oh, my girlfriend lent this to me. And
I love we get a call back to her.
yeah. Actually, I think she gets mentioned again in season 2. Yeah.
I love her.
So they dated for a bit.
Yeah.
So it's E.T.
Which Murphy thinks is drivel.
I know. I could see it. Listen, she's an adult woman.
I get it.
I get
At
it.
the time, no one was quite knew what it was going to be.
Spielberg wasn't Spielberg.
exactly.
You know, he did make kids movies in a way.
My inner child is so offended.
I'm sorry. I never saw E.T. in the theater because I was too scared. And then they re-released it, and my mother was going to take me. And I really remember, like, I was sitting on the stairs. It's really small of my attic, and she's like, "It's okay." And I was like, I think I'm scared. And she tried to convince me to go, and I just wouldn't. Like, they were all ready to get in the car and go see E.T. And I was like, no, I can't.
So my parents, my dad, we will put all the blame on this, and his memory will be proud of it. Did not shield me from movies. I mean, I was going with him to movies that were probably too mature for me. I was his movie buddy. We were buds, and we went to movies together. And there are several movies that I remember traumatizing me as a child. The worst was The Witches, starring Angelica Houston. I was terrified of. I checked all women for lavender eyes. After that movie, I was so messed up, but it still is one of my favorite, like, dark child films. I also loved The Dark Crystal, but I remember Jurassic Park terrifying me. I remember seeing that in the theater and being terrified. But what I didn't realize, I grew up most of my life thinking that I had adored E.T. I thought I loved that movie. And it wasn't until I was probably a teenager and we watched it on tape. And just like, oh, let's watch an oldie. Watched it on tape. And I didn't realize that I had blocked out the hazmat suit scene.
Oh, it's scary.
I didn't remember it at all. I'd spent decades assuming that I loved this movie so much. And there was an entire section that I had traumatized me so badly that I just made myself forget it happened.
And I was scared by the commercials. I
Yes.
didn't know that scene was in it. E.T. scared me.
Yes. Oh, E.T. was scary, man. He was a creepy little dude.
God, I wonder how old I was. I gotta figure out how old I was.
But so anyway, no, but
Yeah.
Murphy did not realize, and we will find out, did not realize the power of E.T.
Yes. Now, here's something I wanted to pose to you. And I don't know if it's just the way that, it's not the way it's written, it's the way that Robert is playing it.
Vladia?
Huh?
Vladia?
Oh, no, I didn't
Oh,
know.
I just love how he calls her Vladia.
Oh, I forgot about that. No. It feels to me like he's doing this on purpose to get them to talk to each other. It's just, there's something in the way that he delivers some of the lines that makes me go, Eldon, are you doing a meet cute? But not the words. No, just the delivery.
There's a quality to his interpretation of Eldon that while Eldon is sometimes blissfully ignorant and just doesn't let things affect him in the way it does other people, and so he just misses cues, which makes him so lovable. He's definitely smarter than I think a lot of people, including Murphy, give him credit for.
Absolutely.
I did not get that interpretation watching this, but now that you're saying it, I would 100% believe it.
Yeah.
But I also see him just being like, I want to watch a movie, and completely missing the fact that they're at each other's throats.
And it changes every time I watch it.
Yeah.
Because again, it's I don't know if it's just because Robert has a really interesting and different way of reading lines or so yes, that's something that sort of, came.
I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah. So they somehow, they decide to watch this movie. We cut to they're crying, like sobbing at the end of it.
Wait, you missed when he says Shutsiepski.
Oh yeah, they're talking during it, and he's already started the movie, and he says Shutsiepski.
Oh, also, speaking of when they start the music.
Yeah.
How much do you think it costs for them to get the real score?
I was thinking the same thing.
How much do you think John Williams' score costs for them to get?
So expensive.
I need to know, because it has to be so expensive. That's the real score.
I know.
And they play it twice.
They play it twice. I thought that too. I was like, oh, guys.
I literally am like, how much was that?
Is this why we don't have season 2?
Because it's all John Williams.
What if that was it? What if it's not the
my
Motown?
God,
What if John Williams cost so much money that they were like, we're done?
We can't do it. It's not worth it.
Sorry. Star Wars has ruined Murphy Brown.
Dang it, John Williams.
Oh, man. Damn Star Wars and feminism. Eldon is not moved at all. He's disappointed on the film. He's dissecting it like a fanboy.
He is. This is what I love is that, and granted, it is a bit of a like women and their emotions. He even says women trope, but Eldon is me where if the logistics don't make sense, it takes me out of the movie.
Eldon, like we said, is a smart guy, and he just can't believe that an alien could be able to eat, Earth candy.
He's like, it wouldn't work.
It wouldn't work for him.
And again, this episode is all about set something up and then swap it. It's really, it's obviously that's usually most comedy, but this episode in particular, everything is dependent upon that. And it's set up with, he was just like wistfully and childishly wanting to watch this
I always
movie.
wanted to see this.
And they're both like, oh, it's drivel. I'd like something more, more mentally stimulating. And then we turn around and they're the ones who are overwhelmed emotionally. And he's like, I don't get it.
I just remember we missed the fact he missed the movie because a job took a lot longer than he thought.
Really, Eldon?
Really, Eldon?
You?
Did it? So they're crying and they're saying that they're not crying, that, that it was a fake suit and it was manipulation, and they're making up all these excuses, but, they're crying. So Eldon, leaves them alone. So they both agree that Murphy will not tell Newsweek that they cried at E.T. if Vladia promises not to tell Pravda. And then they laugh. And then Vlad says that she's surprised that Murphy never saw the movie, but she is, who has time?
Neither of them.
She spends all her time in an airplane. Vlad says the last time she saw a movie, she tried to put on her seatbelt. It's such a great line. They commiserate that on their 40th birthday, Vlad was alone in a hotel room in East Berlin. Murphy was on a Jeep and her crew put a candle in a Hershey bar. Whenever she tells that story, I go, okay, so she was drinking at that time because Murphy's 40 when we meet her. Although watching the episodes now, I realize that timeline's off a little bit.
It's fine.
It's fine. Which I never realized as a kid.
The magic of television.
Yeah. So she gets older every season, not when she's supposed to get older. Anyway, so they talk about how having a relationship is hard because you don't have time, and then you're always flying away, and everything that we will find out later is what happens to Murphy's relationships. There's really some sort of balance, and then she asks Murphy if she ever thinks about having children. And she says, all the time.
Which fascinates me. Coming out of Baby Love, where it was a new concept to her to consider.
I think...
Per the dialogue.
Yeah, but I also think that it's something that... Well, okay. So she's not asking her... She's asking her in the present. Mm-hmm. So Baby Love's
since,
in the... Yeah, so since.
Exactly. But that is something that I was like, oh... my head says it's because of the events of Baby Love.
I think so. Yeah, I see where you're going. Yeah, it sort of awakened this thing in her. But I also love it because it's consistency to something that leads us to the end of season 3.
Exactly. Well, and what I love about it, and why it gives me little chills as a listener, or as a fan, is that it is something that a character could say that gives us a lot of depth of their inner life. But what it does as an audience member is it's something that it's a chime in your head that you can trace back to something that you witnessed, and it's something that you shared with that character. Mm-hmm. It makes you go, oh, it's because of that. And it's this like Easter egg for you that if you didn't know the context of Baby Love, it would still be meaningful about her. But if you were watching from the beginning and you watched her go through this thing, it connects you personally to the events of her life that you got to be present for.
Yeah, this show spoiled me to continuity.
It sure did.
Because a lot of sitcoms don't do continuity.
And just small payoffs.
Yeah, they were really good about, most of the time keeping to that Bible. Mm-hmm. So Murphy says that they should, she should stay. There's pudding, mousse. I'm sorry. There's mousse. There's mousse in the kitchen. They have some coffee, but Vlad needs to go. She has a date with Frank. She's like, maybe I'll get lucky. And Murphy goes, maybe? Like, yeah, you're gonna get with Frank.
Yeah, well, everybody knows you guys are gonna get together.
Headcanon. She gets with Frank.
Oh, she got with Frank.
Yeah. But Murphy feels she needs to give her something, and she pulls an album, Aretha Franklin album, out of her record sort of area.
First of all, I have an all caps on, like, she gives her Aretha.
Yes.
That's a huge deal.
A classic Aretha.
And while I recognize that they have bonded in a unique way, I'm like, really? It's a signed Aretha Franklin album of I Never Loved a Man the Way I Love You.
I think Murphy's also just feels bad.
I think she feels bad. I think she sees a kindred who I feel like this song in particular maybe is something that a feeling they both share.
Yeah.
That somebody who will really understand this song. For those of you who don't know, it's the 11th. That album is the 11th studio album by Aretha Franklin, and it's one of our mutual favorites. Because this is, spoiler of favorite moments that happen on the show, Murphy gets to meet Aretha. Mm-hmm. But that's a huge deal to Murphy. This is, getting a signed Aretha album is no small task. even for Murphy Brown.
Yeah. She obviously didn't get it in person.
Yeah, because she's never met her before. So it's a huge gesture to give her not only an Aretha album, but a signed Aretha album. So my little headcanon for this moment is that this is somebody who will really understand the gesture.
Yeah, and I think, Murphy doesn't have a lot of female friends who are in the same situation as she is.
Really gets what she's going through.
That's, I think that she sees what a missed opportunity it was, and it's like, oh, don't go yet. Oh, wait, She said that they'll talk on the phone, which I'm sure they never do. She can call from work. Not that she's cheap or anything.
Yeah, because, work will pick it up.
Yeah. And then they're about to shake hands at the door, and instead they decide to put out their fingers like at the end of E.T. We're doing it right now.
We're doing it right now.
E.T. And then the John Williams music plays.
That's twice.
That's twice.
I just need to know, is that in the script that they do the E.T. finger?
Absolutely.
Is that Barnett Kellman's choice, or is that one of their? I need to know who did this.
I think it's in the script.
I assume it is, but then all of a sudden I was like, I don't know. Based on the stories we have about Barnett, I wouldn't be surprised if this was like a great moment of, instead of having a really meaningful handshake or hug, that they have this really cute thing that just endears them
And
to
then they
all
just
of us.
added the music in post.
I don't know.
I mean, they obviously
Who did it?
I mean, they obviously did, but as a second thought, well, you never know. We'll see. And so we are done with the
Moscow.
Russians. In the Russians, we are done. But you know what? Hopefully, we are done with them in our lives. But I don't think we are. Oh my God, I'm losing my accent.
I'm fine if they're in our lives. I just hope that they're positively in our lives.
I haven't done this accent in a long time. And
I mean,
it's going
clearly
away.
the people come here for our accent work, so I'm very
yeah.
disappointed with you. Anyway, so that is episode 16.
Yes. Please.
Again,
Yes, Jesse, continue.
no, I just wanted to say again, this was not an episode that either of us were particularly like, oh, yay, we're on that episode.
Yeah.
And it brought up some really cool stuff for me.
Yeah.
I'm very thankful, again, for this podcast so that I can go back and reassess these things. Because,
Same here.
you know what? I actually really like this episode now.
Yeah, I love what it's saying about women and about people in general from different backgrounds or who are told to be enemies.
Yes.
Because
And
that's what it's about.
That's what it is. We are supposed to be enemies. We are opposites, and we cannot find a common ground. It's black and white, and it's actually not. It is gray.
So you should follow us on social media.
You should. We're fun.
We are.
We're so
We are
fun.
on the Instagram
Yes, we are on the Twitter.
and the Facebooks.
Indeed, it is Murphy Brown Pod, and that is Murphy Brown Pod, as in short for podcast.
MurphyBrownPod.com, MurphyBrownPod@gmail.com.
We like to keep it simple. You can listen to our Spotify playlist. It's called the Murphy Brown Empowerment Playlist. It's songs from Murphy Brown and inspired by Murphy Brown from the Motown era and alike. You can either find it on Spotify if you're used to using it. Otherwise, we do have a link to get to it on the website.
So the next episode 17, is my dinner with Einstein
And we'll see you next week.
for another edition of FYI.
The Murphy Brown Podcast.